طهارة غسل اليدين قبل إدخالهما الإناء إذا استيقظ
can you get the windows please?
متودي من نومه لقوله عليه السلام إذا استيقظ أحدكم من منامه فلا يغمسن يداه في الإناء حتى يغسلها ثلاثا فإنه لا يدري أين باتت يدوه. So he said the sunnah of tahara is washing the hands before you enter them in a container when the person who requires the wudu when he wakes up from his sleep, for the saying of his alayhi salam, when any of you wake up from his sleep, then do not dip your hands in the container until you have washed the hands 3 times thrice.
Okay, Salathan is what? Why is it mansub?
It's the maf'ul mutlaq.
Not maf'ul. Here's your papers, guys. Yeah, this is Salathan is the sifa of the maf'ul mutlaq. Okay, so ghaslan thalathan. Ghaslan thalathan.
So that's a sifa and for indeed he does not know where his hands have spent the night.
Okay, so look at this now. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وسنن الطهارة غسل اليدين قبل إدخالهما الإناء إذا استيقظ المتوضئ من نومه. The sunnahs now, from here it's going to start the sunnahs now. So we've learned the fard of tahara, of wudu, 4 fard. Now we're going to talk about the sunnahs. So Imam al-Hidayah mentions that the sunnahs, from amongst the sunnahs, is ghaslul yadayn. This is the first one, okay? So this is sunnah number 1. Number 2, tasmiyatullah ta'ala, saying Bismillah at the beginning of wudu. Yeah. Number 3 is using miswak, cleaning the teeth. Number 4 is washing the mouth and doing istinshaq of the nose. Number 5 is wiping the ears. Number 6 is doing takhleel of the beard. Number 7 is doing takhleel of the fingers. Number 8, repeating everything in wudu 3 times. Yeah, so these are the 8 sunnahs that Imam Quduri mentions. Yeah, so make a note of these, because when we come to each one, Imam Hidayah is going to look at whether these are actually sunnahs or not, because he doesn't necessarily agree with everything Imam Quduri says. Okay, so it's very important that you understand. So وَسُنَنُ الطَّهَارَةِ غَسْلُ الْيَدَيْنِ قَبْلَ إِدْخَالِهِمَا الْإِنَاءِ. So look at this now. In usul, yes, there's 4 main usul that we follow. The Quran, there's the Sunnah, there's the Ijma', and there's the Qiyas. So these are the 4 main usul that we follow. Now out of these usul, there are other usul besides these 4. Okay, but Mullah Jivan in Nur al-Anwar, he mentions that things like Shar'u man qablana, Qawlu Sahabi, and other usul that we have, these are actually part of the 4. Yeah, like if a Sahabi says something, is that a separate usul besides these 4? So he says no, they actually come under either it's Sunnah or it's Ijma or it's Qiyas. Yes? And likewise, Al-Urf as well. So the Urf would either come under Ijma or something else. So this is why first of all he starts off with the Quran, because the Hanafi's usul is you first of all look in the Quran. If the answer's in the Quran, then after that you look anywhere else. Meaning the sunnah. After the sunnah, you look at other things. So, sunanut tahara. So, the word sunan, look, because it's okay. Sunnatun means two things. Either it means way, practice, or number two, it means, either number one it means way, and number two it either means practice, like sunnat of Allah. That's the practice of Allah. So if it's sunnah, meaning way, then the jama is sunan, with the dhamma on the sin. And if it's sunnah with, if it's sanan with the fatha, then it means the jama of sunnah, which means the practice. Have you got that?
So what the jama with practice?
So the jama with practice is sanan. So sunan at-taharati. Tahara means purification. Now look, two words are going to come in fiqh which are used with this word. You have tahara and you have tahur. Tahara means purification, like doing wudu, doing ghusl. That's tahara. And tahur with a fatha on it. That means purifier. Have you got that? So for instance, Mr. Sheen is a tahur. It's a purifier. It cleans other things. You don't call it a tahara.
Ism fa'il.
No, it's not ism fa'il. So it's mubalagha, like ghafoor, tahur. Okay, so Sunan al-Taharati. So he starts off with these and he mentions 8 sunnahs of tahara. First of all, ghaslul yadaini. Now look at this, it's ghasl, not ghusl, okay. Ghusl with a dhamma means to take a bath. With a fatha it means to wash. So Sunan al-Taharati, ghaslul yadaini, washing of the 2 hands. Qabla idkhalihima, before placing them into the vessel. إذا استيقظ المتوضي من نومه, when the person performing wudu wakes up from his sleep. Now there's 2 things I want to point out here. First of all, whenever you study fiqh, this book fiqh was written approximately 800 years ago. Yes? If it's written 800 years ago, you have to understand how things used to work in 800 years ago. So 800 years ago, they never used to have taps like we have today. They used to have a bucket at home or something similar, and they would fetch water from a well or somewhere, fill it up, and then what they would do, they'd actually dip their hands into it to scoop out the water. Does that make sense? They'd either use like a scooping cup, or what they would do, they would dip their hands into it. So by dipping your hands into it, what's happening? You can contaminate the water. So bear that in mind. And if you don't understand this, if you don't apply this understanding of how the fiqh was used in their time, it makes it very difficult to apply it in today's time. And this is why our teacher used to say to us, when you study fiqh, there's 2 things you need to understand. You need to understand how the fiqh was established in their days, and you need to understand how it's applied in today's time. If someone understands how fiqh was applied in their days, but doesn't understand how fiqh is applied in today's time, then what happens? Then the person will make big mistakes in applying fiqh in their society. Have you got that? So this is why it's very important. And a lot of people, they kind of make these kind of mistakes. They'll say stuff like it comes in a hadith like this. But what they will not understand is, how does it apply in today's times? Like for example, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they used to use a miswak. So in today's times, can we use a toothbrush instead? Do we get reward for cleaning our teeth using a toothbrush? Does that make sense? So this is why, if you don't understand how it was applied in them days, you won't be able to understand how it's applied in today's times. Or likewise, for example, going to the toilet. So going to the toilet in them days, did they used to have a toilet like we do? A separate room in the house? Yeah, where you used to enter and it was secure, private, and you could relieve yourself and the feces and urine would go into the sewage. No, they used to go outside. So that's why the rulings would be slightly different for that. Make sense? Okay, so anyway. So that's the first thing I want to mention. Second thing I want to mention is this. Look, in usul, there's something called haqiqa and majaz. I mentioned this before to you. Haqiqa means the literal meanings you take for a word. Okay, for example, like, if I say, what's this? Is it a book, yeah? Yeah. If I say to you, pass me the book, I've said to you, pass me the thing which we call a book, which has been named a book. Yeah, this thing has been named a book. Yes? But if I say this to you, you know the judge, he threw the book at Zayd. What book is he talking about? Yeah, so it's not talking about a literal book, is it? Yeah, it's talking about, it's a metaphor. Does that make sense? So you have to understand how metaphors work in the Quran and how they work in Hadith as well. So over here, when it says, إِذَا اسْتَيْقَظَ الْمُتَوَدِّي, when a guy wakes up, does he wake up doing wudu? Huh? So how can he be called a mutawaddi whilst he's waking up? So this, look, words with regards to this have three usages, or three, you can call something by three statements. Yeah? Look, at the moment, yes, let's say for example, at the moment I'm an adult. Yeah? Now if you were to say to me, let's say my dad said to me, come here, kid, come here. Yeah, what is he calling me by? Am I a kid? No, yeah. I used to be, isn't it? So this is called tasmiyatu shay bima kana. In other words, you're calling something by what it was in the past. Tasmiyatu shay bima kana. In other words, you're naming something by what it was called in the past. Yeah, like this, Allah in the Quran uses this as well. So Allah says that إِذَا بَلَغَ الْأَطْفَالُ مِنْكُمْ الْحُلُمَ, when the children reach the age of puberty. Once it's reached puberty, do you call him a child? No, no. وَابْتَلُوا الْيَتَامَ حَتَّى إِذَا بَلَغُوا النِّكَاحِ, test the yatims until they reach puberty. Yeah. So in other words, Allah is calling them something by what they were in the past. Likewise, number two, you can call something by what it is in the future as well. Yeah, like for example, let's say there's a student and the teacher says, Hazrat Shaykh, answer this question. So what is he calling him by? Something in the future. Tasmiyatu shay bima sayakun. Or tasmiyatu shay bima ya'ulu ilayhi. In other words, calling something by something which he will become. Have you got that? Like a mother says to the little daughter, woman, come here. Yeah. So here, look, إِذَا اسْتَيْقَظَ الْمُتَوَدِّي means this, that when that person who intends to do wudu gets up from his sleep. Make sense? إِذَا اسْتَيْقَظَ الْمُتَوَدِّي مِنْ نَوْمِهِ, when that person intends to do wudu. So now you can call him a mutawaddi even though he's not doing wudu yet. He's just waking up. Unless some of you guys, mashallah, yeah, when you wake up whilst doing wudu, you reach that level of iman. Yeah, that you can wake up and just do, be in a state of wudu. Yeah, like, there's one kid, yeah, his mum said to him, have you done wudu? He said, yeah, I did last week. Yeah, so, no last week wudus. Okay, now look at this now. So Imam Hidayah has brought Imam Quduli's statement, hasn't he? Sunnah tahara ghusl yadayn. So you have to wash your hands. It's sunnah to wash your hands before you place them in the container. Why is he saying in the container? Why? Contamination, isn't it? In them days, remember. Nowadays, the tap system different. Because when you wash, the water washes away And it's not really going to contaminate the fresh water that's going to come out of the tap after that. Okay, and then he mentions sleep as well. So we're going to come to that. لِقَوْلِهِ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ إِذَا اسْتَيْقَظَ أَحَدُكُم مِّن مَنَامِهِ When one of you wakes up from his sleep, فَلَا يَغْمِسَنَّ He should not dip, immerse his hands in the vessel. حَتَّى يَغْسِلَهَا ثَلَاثًا Until he washes them 3 times. So this is how they used to do it. Look, they would tilt the vessel a bit. They would wash their hands outside the vessel. 3 times they do this, because 3 times is considered to be thorough. And then after that they dip their hands and start their wudu. Make sense? Do you need to do that with a tap? Yeah. So, because you're not really going to contaminate the water, are you? But it's still a sunnah to do it using the tap. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. Now look at this. إِذَا اسْتَيْقَظَ أَحَدُكُم مِّن مَنَامِهِ فَلَا يَغْمِسَنَّ He should not dip his hands into the vessel until حَتَّى يَغْسِلَهَا ثَلَاثًا Until he washes it 3 times. Yeah. So wash it 3 times. فَإِنَّهُ لَا يَدْرِي أَيْنَ بَاتَتْ يَدُهُ Because he does not know where his hands spent the night. Does that make sense? So, why is he saying where the hands spent the night? So this is, okay, hands don't spend the nights in places, do they? They don't have a mind of their own. They go and spend the night somewhere else. Make sense? Yeah, so this is majaz as well. Yeah, isti'ara. So it's as though the hands have a life of their own and they... So, why? Look at this hadith now. This hadith, there's an usul which we have, which contradicts with this, with the concept that we're presented with here. And that is this, that from other hadith we know, al-yaqeenu la yazulu bishak. Al-yaqeen la yazul bish shak. There's a usul, remember this, okay, because it's going to come time and time again. Al-yaqeen la yazulu bishak. Certitude is not removed by doubt. In other words, if you doubt, let's say for example, I did wudu in the morning. Yeah, at 8 o'clock in the morning I've done wudu. I've gone for work. Now it's 2 o'clock now, salat time. And I know I did wudu in the morning, but I'm in doubt, has my wudu broken or not? Yeah, so I'm thinking, it might have. So as long as I'm in doubt, that doubt does not wipe out certainty. Make sense? So the certainty that I have done my wudu overrides doubt. And hence doubt cannot override certitude. Does that make sense? So when you went to sleep, were your hands clean? Yes or no? Yeah, most people, their hands are clean, aren't they? Like, unless you go to toilet or something and you don't really take care of your hands when you're washing your your private parts. That's something else. But usually people, or unless someone has sexual intercourse and their hands have semen on there or other fluids on there, that's something else. But generally people's hands be clean. So this is why you have to understand this hadith in that context. So the ulama say this: if you definitely know that your hands are impure, then it's wajib for you to wash your hands before you dip them in the vessel. Yes? Because you definitely know they're dirty. And if you dip them in the vessel, then what's going to happen? They're going to become impure. Yeah? Number 2. If you definitely know that your hands are clean, then you don't need to wash your hands. Like let's say you were a bit OCD. You washed your hands, you put plastic gloves on, you tied them up, you went to sleep, woke up in the morning. Are your hands dirty? No. Okay, number 3 is a normal situation where you've gone to sleep, your hands, you're not sure if your hands have touched your private parts. Now look at how deep you have to think about the context of their time. In their time, when they used to go toilet, when they used to go toilet, Shah Waliullah rahimahullah mentioned something very good. He says that because they were used to using stones to clean themselves, then what used to happen, that urine around their private parts, there used to be a little bit around it, isn't it? So at night time, if they used to sweat, or if their hands happened to touch their private parts at night, what would happen? It transfer. Does that make sense? So he says that's the benefit of it. Make sense? Yeah, it gives you an understanding of how in their times, socially, how they used to deal with these things. So this is why إِذَا اسْتَيْقَظَ أَحَدُكُم مِّن مَنَامِهِ, when one of you wakes up from his sleep, he should not dip his hands into the water حَتَّى يَغْسِلَا ثَلَاثًا. That's why it's sunnah and it's not wajib. Everyone understand why it's sunnah and not wajib? Yeah? Okay.
So there's three principles. If you definitely know your hands are unclean, then it is wajib to not to dip them.
Yeah, then you've got to wash them, definitely.
And if you definitely know your hands are clean, then you can.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
And if you're unsure, follow.
Then if you're unsure, then it's sunnah to do it. Yeah. Now look at this. What if someone can say this, can't they? They can say, well, you're saying it's not sunnah if your hands are tied. Yeah, it's not sunnah to wash your hands. But the hadith says to wash your hands, isn't it? Yeah, so what do we say? We say, look, you know the Prophet ﷺ, whenever he says something, there's two possibilities of why he's saying it. One is he's saying it because there's a logical reasoning behind it. Yes? Like for example, there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, he said, if a fly falls into one of your drink, dip it in and then take it out, because you don't know in which wing there is cure and in which wing there is illness. So when you dip it in, one of the wings has illness, one of the wings has a cure, and you dip it out, from qulu thumman qulu, take it out and it becomes clean. Make sense? Now you see, there's a reason there, isn't it? In other words, to save your body from being harmed by the effects of this fly, logically makes sense. But there's certain things the Prophet ﷺ did which we don't understand. It's beyond us to understand why. Like the Prophet ﷺ used to pray 2 rakats before Fajr. Why 2 rakats? Why not 4 rakats? Yeah? That's something we just follow. These are known as al-umur at-ta'abbudiyya. This is going to come as well. Yeah, so I need to make a note of these terms that are used. Umur ta'abbudi. Yeah, so this is a ritual that we practice. Ta'abbudiyya. Al-amr at-ta'abbudi. So this is a matter which is, we just follow it without knowing the reasons behind it. But over here, is there a reason for why we have to wash our hands? Is that mentioned here? Yeah. So إِنَّهُ لَا يَدْرِي أَيْنَ بَتْ يَدُهُ. He doesn't know where his hands spent the night. Yeah, so that's what we call a reason. In Arabic, the word for reason is illa here. Illa. So in the usul videos, yeah, you can watch this. It's near the end. Okay, so فَإِنَّهُ لَا يَدْرِي أَيْنَ بَاتَتْ يَدُهُ. Now look at this. This is just one hadith, isn't it? But do you see how much usul you have to understand to be able to... Now look at this. Imam Hidayah, after that, he says, وَلِأَنَّ الْيَدَ آلَةُ التَّطْهِيرِ. So Imam Hidayah, one of his habits is that he, even though he'll bring a hadith or an ayah of the Quran, what he'll do on top of that, he'll bring some logical reasoning. Does that make sense? Because the faqih, when you become a faqih, what you want to try and do is you want to try and find as much as possible like the crux of everything. Yes? And this is what the Prophet ﷺ, he used to train the Sahaba in doing, trying to find reasons behind how things work. One day what happened was, a woman came to the Prophet ﷺ and she said to the Prophet ﷺ, you know, in one narration his father, one narration his mother, my father has, Hajj has become necessary upon him, but he is too old to perform Hajj. Can I perform Hajj on his behalf? So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, if your father had a debt, yes, would you pay that debt off? And she said, yes. Look how he's answering it. Then the debt of Allah is more important. In other words, he was showing her that you can compare it like a debt. Does that make sense? So he was teaching the Sahaba that, look, try and understand the reasoning behind everything. Try and understand, because when you know the reasoning behind something, for you to know, for example, in today's times, can you perform wudu with nail varnish on? Yeah? In them days, they never used to have nail varnish. Yeah? So you say, okay, I have to try and understand in them days, what's the whole concept of, wudu? Does it have to permeate? When you understand the concept of water permeating, then it makes sense. Does everyone understand that? So we'll stop there, inshallah, for Maghrib, and then we'll continue.